What's up, everybody? Welcome to Community Economics, a new series from Forte that explores the ecosystem behind video games, the developers who make them, and of course, the communities that support them. I'm Greg Miller, your guest host for today's episode, and let me tell you, it's going to be a humdinger. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one, the only, Will Wright.
Hi, Greg. Hell yes.
Hello, Will. I think everybody knows we're here to talk about Proxi, your brand new video game that you're working on, the things that are going on with that. But before then, there are, as I know, as a 38-year-old man in this industry, every day new people entering it who have no idea when I talk about a game from 5 years ago. You joke around about not being the only Will Wright in the world. How do you describe yourself when you talk about your body of work?
Oh, God. I mean, it's something I've enjoyed doing. It's something I've spent many years doing. I've been lucky to work with a number of incredibly talented people that brought this stuff to life. You know, I'm kind of like the figurehead, though. You know,
Sure.
So I feel a little guilty about the fact that I get all the attention when I worked with all these incredible people to bring these properties to life.
When I think of you, and I think of the kind of games you make, obviously, with the teams you work with, right? I do think about you pushing the bounds of what a game is, right? Like SimCity, of course, for me personally, was life-changing. Like that was a game that I sat there and played over and over and over again and couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I remember, you know, years later when I entered the industry to cover it, covering Spore, and you talking about what that game was going to do and what you were working on then. I think everybody who's clicked on this video wants to know what you are working on now. So what are you taking from those games, and like what about this new project lines up with what you've done before?
Well, when I kind of started out, actually, before SimCity, I had a game called Raid on Bungling Bay, which is a pretty stupid shoot-'em-up game. But from that, I got very interested in the editor, where I was building the worlds that you would blow up that became SimCity. And
Sure.
after SimCity, I was very interested in looking at how personal people took their creations. And I think my career path, for the most part, has been getting closer and closer to the player. I was very interested in how looking at somebody's city could tell me how somebody thought about where they live, their environment. You know, are they concerned about crime, pollution, traffic, whatever. And so I think the path of my game career has really been getting closer and closer to the player. And I think Proxi is another step in that direction. You know, I actually now want to get into the player's mind. I want the player's mind to become the landscape of the game in some sense. So
It sounds like the beginning of a horror movie sometimes. They say,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah. In fact, you know, I like the idea that a game can be kind of creepy. You know, can kind of scare you, especially it's scaring you with aspects of your own personality. You know, what's inside of me? What are the deep, dark things, urges, associations, feelings that are deep inside of me in my id that I can now become the landscape of the game that I'm playing.
So how do you even begin to wrap your head around what that is as a game? Getting into players' minds, what does that mean?
Well, I mean, I think we've seen from a number of science fiction movies and whatever, that the idea that you are really nothing more than the collection of all your memories. If you imagine that you woke up tomorrow with a whole different set of memories about your life, you know, your opportunities, the things that happen to you, you would be a different person.
Sure.
So can we find a game format in which we can acquire these memories from your life? They're really important memories, not, you know, what you had for lunch at Starbucks yesterday, but, you know, the things that you remember from 10 years old, 12 years old, 15 years old.
The touchstones of your life, right? The things that define you.
Yeah, exactly. Can we now analyze these, put them into a deep AI, start doing associations between the different aspects that they share, and start building a model of your mind? You know, not just your conscious mind, but as well as your subconscious mind. You know, how do you deeply feel and think and behave with the world around you based upon your life experience?
So I think for most people watching this and hearing about Proxi as we start to get even deeper to it, two questions spring to mind. Number one, how is that a game? And then number two, how do you get my memories in the game?
Well, first of all, you know, if you look at most of the stuff I've done, I'm not just necessarily sure I would categorize them as games. All right.
That's fair enough. I'm sure your entire career you've been in boardrooms pitching things and people are like, how is this a game?
Right, yeah. I mean, so typically a game has rules. Here's a win condition. You know, there's the end of the game. Starting with SimCity, I never really explicitly said this is how you win. Every player, as they sat down to play SimCity, they had to decide: do I want a city with low crime, the largest population, low traffic, whatever? But the player was actually the one assigning the win condition. So I think of these more as software toys, where the player is actually coming up to this toy and just, I'll give you a ball, and you can decide to play basketball or baseball or whatever. You can come up with the rules, how to use that ball, and you can come up with the win conditions. So with most of the work I've done, even the Sims, are you trying to make your Sims happy, prosperous?
Just trying to wall them into a dungeon and make them pee themselves, of course.
Yeah, exactly. How many times can you kill them? But I find it more interesting to give the player a software toy and have them come up with their own kind of rule conditions and their own win conditions. What is a win for me, which might be very different than a win for somebody else.
Sure.
So I tend to think of these things less as games and more as kind of educational toys in a sense. Now with Proxi, again, there's not going to be necessarily a win condition. It's going to be about, can you reveal enough of yourself to Proxi through your memories so that Proxi can start building a fairly accurate model of how you think and how you behave and how you would talk to somebody else. And the ultimate goal is that we build an avatar of your id, of your subconscious, that can now go out and interact with other proxies. It might be your friends, your family. It might be historic proxies. It might be Albert Einstein or fictitious proxies, It could be Horatio Hornblower, whatever. But and we can have leaderboards around that. But really, I'm trying to view this as almost a microscope on your subconscious.
Okay.
I know that that makes a lot of sense.
Trust me, again, with the pedigree you have, I'm in. I'm done. I just need to understand it, and I'm sure everybody else does too. So it is that idea of building the proxy. How am I building the proxy? What am I doing there?
Well, the first thing we start with is the memory maker. So we have, almost like the creature creator in Spore, we want to have a very fun to use, simple editor where you can create memories from your life. And you can insert, 3D objects, photographs, audio, whatever. And you can think of it almost like either a snow globe or maybe a crystal ball that now encapsulates that memory. That you can, if you choose to, you could share with somebody else. In fact, we will have shared worlds where you and maybe your college roommates might share memories of your college years on a different world. Or you might keep it private, but it's very much in your control. But basically, you create these little snow globes of your memories, and now you start placing them on the landscape. And you get to organize them. And as you organize them, they start making connections with each other based on shared associations. It might be that these, two memories involve pets or vacation or something scary, whatever it is. But we start analyzing these connections and these associations based upon how you editorially organize these memories. And from that, we start building roughly a map of how you think and how you see the world.
This makes more sense, right? Because when I was looking at the Proxi website and stuff, you have the little bubbles there, you have the snow globes, and for me, I was like, oh, they look like dioramas, right?
Yeah,
I'm making a diorama of a memory that was important to me. Whether it's my wedding, right? It's the birth of my first child. It's something like that. That makes sense. Okay.
And also, as you create these little snow globes, you're assigning keywords to them in 6 categories, and so you might be including people or places or time or activities or things. And these keywords become the things in which they make associations between themselves.
Sure.
So it might be that, you include your cat, Kitty over here, and Rover, your dog over there. But through AI techniques, we start realizing that these are both pets, and we realize there's a pet connection between these memories, even though the keywords didn't exactly match. So we use fairly deep AI techniques to start abstracting the keywords you use around your memories and looking for associations conceptually between the memories.
Okay. And so I understand that. Now my next question becomes, you talked about the proxies being able to go out and interact with each other, right? You build the AI helps build out what my proxy is, my memory, or headspace, id, that can now go interact with somebody else's, right?
Yeah.
What does that look like? Is that just the connections, or is that some kind of...
No, we want to bring that to conversational level. So you start having a conversation with Karl Marx or whoever. And, you might bring up a vacation you had. He brings up, that he was in, wherever, Switzerland, and you might bring up skiing, So we actually look at the threads of the conversations, and we can actually build leaderboards. Who is Karl Marx's best friend, or Mother Teresa, or Stalin, or whoever, or your best friends, or your family. You might choose to keep this private, and in fact, just have a shared world with your family, and look not only at the shared memories that you have, but how you remember it differently. So you went to a concert with your college roommate, and you had a great time, but he got sick and threw up, whatever, But it'll actually start building mini games around the differences between the memories that you have with the people close to you.
What kind of mini games?
Oh, I mean, we've kind of barely gotten to that point yet. But I think contrasting differing memories of the same event, with people that you know very well, is a fascinating topic for me.
In general, on top of being a fascinating person, and don't, scoff at me like you've scoffed at every other compliment I've given you, right? The idea here is fascinating. And again, talking to you about it, I love that it is already pushing so many boundaries. Where you're talking about AI in a way that I only really see when IGN reports on some AI patent Sony filed trying to get it, right? It seems like you're cutting edge on that. Is that a brave new world for you, or is it pretty second nature so far?
Well, I was actually very interested in AI from I guess the early 80s, back when they had Eliza and these really lame AI things. And people were saying, 10 years from now, we'll have machine translation. 10 years from now, we'll have all this amazing stuff. It never happened, But
one day, it's still coming. It's still coming.
No, there's only CD-ROM. CD-ROM was like, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And then one day it just took off,
Yeah.
AI is right at that point right now. AI is just blasting off, exceeding our expectations to a remarkable degree. And I think over the next 10 years, we're going to see just remarkable stuff coming out of it. And so I think we're trying to ride that wave right now, that we are seeing the machine learning stuff that can look at a large amount of data, extract patterns in a meaningful way, and then reapply those patterns in cool and fun ways that we can use in games. I think that's about half of Proxi, is surfing this wave of AI that's happening right now in a way to where it'll help you understand yourself in a way that you never thought possible before.
Oh, sure. I mean, that's the thing that's the most exciting for it, is I love the idea of putting in the memories that are most important to me and then seeing what the AI does with that. What does the AI decode or look at that I've missed from surface level? That I've identified these 3 or 4 memories are, so important to me, but what does that mean according to the AI? That sounds fascinating.
And then how do we bring that to a way that you value very highly as opposed to just targeting advertising to you?
Sure. Yes. Thank you. I get enough of that. I mentioned something and then Instagram's got these paintings of dogs. I'm like, I get it. Thank you very much. So then, you're talking so much about this being not something you're building for the community, but something with them, right? It's a collaboration, it sounds like.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. I mean, I've noticed that, for a long time now, that when I build a game now, I'm not so much focused on building a great game. I'm building, in more sense, a great community that's going to help us build a great game, because I think the community are essentially our co-creators in these experiences now. And unless we can build a great community first, the game's going to kind of suck. It'll be okay. It might be mediocre. But if we can build a great community first and they help us then build the game, that's where the sky's the limit. So my major focus right now is on how do we basically kind of initiate and seed a great community.
And so that's where I want to jump in. Yeah. And I want to ask basically the question, how do you do that? Right. Because obviously I think what you've hinted at and talked about, right, is that you're building these globes, you're putting, or your memories, you're building whatever you want into these memories for Proxi. If I'm talking about this violin recital I had, am I going in and modeling a violin to put in there? If that's what I want to put in there, am I sculpting that? Am I putting that asset in there? How does that work? This is user created, right?
Yeah. Well, certain players will decide they want to make a cool violin 3D model. All right.
Sure.
That's going to be a fairly small percentage. You, as a more casual player, might look at this range of cool violins that other players have created and decide, oh, I want that one. That's exactly my violin. I'm going to put it in my memory. The player who created that will get credit for that.
Okay.
This has actually been a big point of contention in some of the communities I've dealt with in the past. In The Sims, we had these player communities that were creating specific, custom designed sim skins, objects, whatever, putting them on websites. Other people were actually downloading them and putting them on their website, taking credit for them. There was a lot of friction in that community around the people basically stealing assets, stealing creations from other users. So that's a big point of this, is making sure that whoever creates an asset in this maintains credit for it. And we have a transactional history of where that asset goes and who uses it. And the person who created that asset gets credit for creating it in whatever format we want to. But on the other hand, you might create your violin memory. I've grabbed this violin from some other creator, put in 5 other things, and now created a template for your violin recital, for instance.
Sure.
Now, that is a creation that you've made, using other people's creations.
Of course,
yeah. That also is an asset that we can now track. And if somebody wants to take that as a starting point for their violin recital, you get credit for that collection. So at every stage, we can keep track of who created every piece of the asset or the collection and return that credit back to the creator. So I think that's going to be a huge step, toward getting people motivated to putting their creative energies into helping us build this game.
This sounds a lot like NFTs. Is this NFTs?
Well, I mean, NFTs are typically thought of as like this speculative thing where, I'm going to make a painting, make an NFT of it, and somebody's going to try to make money off of it.
Exactly.
This is much more about how do we give the community credit for the value that they assign to our game, all right? So if we view the community as co-creators of the game with us, we want to share that credit with the community. And so really it's about tracking credit, tracking value that everybody adds to this experience for everyone else.
Of course, that makes perfect sense, right? I mean, that's the whole thing. I've been part of UGC communities before in games, and it is that idea of putting something into a game world or a game, somebody taking that, putting it into their level gets super popular, everybody says their level's great, but nobody knows that I made the tree or I made the sound effect or something like that.
Exactly. And this is including audio as well, so people that put in, background audio, musical stings, ambient sound effects, whatever, they are co-creating the game with us. And we want them to share in, whatever value that other people get from the experience.
You talk about value. Is it going to be the option that I can put it for free, obviously, and everybody can take my violin and do whatever they want to? Or can I put it out and say, this is the one violin I have, and I put a price tag on it?
Yeah. I mean, It'll be the creator's choice. I can make a limited edition. There are only 100 of these violins. Or I'm going to give this violin for free to everybody. That's the creator's choice. And at that point, it becomes kind of a Darwinian marketplace. But sure. we're not forcing that on anybody. The creators get to decide, how much they want to control their creation.
Of course, yeah. I think that's what so many people are striving for in these communities. When you see people creating that, right? It's always that push and pull. And I think you just brought it, right? You're talking about what you're doing with the community instead of for them.
Yeah.
And I always... Oh, go ahead, please.
Some people want this, just for social credit. Oh, wow, I'm the most popular, creator of musical instruments. Other people, might find a way to monetize this. That's their choice. And so I think there's going to be kind of a whole ecosystem of different levels of creativity, creators, and what their motivations are.
Oh, yeah, I can see that, right? And it's the idea, too, that you've seen so many people go and basically treat video game creation or creating assets in a video game like it's their second job when they're not getting a return on it, right? When they aren't making any money from it. They work their day job, they come home, and they do all this stuff. Obviously, this would be a better system.
Yeah, and a lot of people are actually making a living off of this. I mean, some of our Sims fan sites that they were running were running $250,000 a year from subscriptions to their fan sites. And that's fine. I don't want to kind of limit or put them into a box saying that you only are able to participate at this level.
Yeah, of course. And then you talk about the levels. I think that's an interesting place to take it too. When you said earlier, I was like, what kind of mini games? You're like, we're still working on that. We're planning on that. We're making that stuff. That's happening right now. Mm-hmm. Does this go that far as well? Are people able to go create their own mini games, or is it that I'm creating an asset, or is it I'm creating a memory? Like, is the sky the limit really when it comes to Proxi?
Well, actually, a big part of it is that we want the early community that comes in to have a big say in where this game goes. So we're going to be actually opening special forums for people, that kind of come in, help us fund the game at an early level. But they're going to have very deep discussions with us about what kind of mini games we should have, and where this game should go creatively. So I think I'm a big proponent of the idea that the community is not just giving us assets to put the game, but they're also steering the development of the game into the future. So I think that some of the best ideas we're going to get about where this game ends up being is going to be from the very early community that comes in and engages with us.
That makes sense. And I think, obviously, good head on your shoulders for it. But that's the next question. So don't roll your eyes. Stop it. Accept the praise, Will. I will not have this on my show, which isn't my show at all. And that's my next question. So you, of course, are making this game. And, of course, I say you talked about the team you have before you. Talk to me about the team you have working on Proxi.
It's actually a pretty small team, which I enjoy. I've worked on teams of 120 people. Proxi were more like 15. And it's a huge difference. It's the difference between getting into a Ferrari versus getting into a
Mini Cooper.
Container ship or something. And so it gives us, we're fleet of foot in a sense. But also, we're able to outsource a lot of the technology that otherwise we'd have to build a much bigger team. So things like the transactional technology that Forte is, giving us. Things like some of the AI stuff that we're pulling from open source, public domain, whatever. There's a lot of other people's shoulders that we're standing on. But right now, with a team of 15 people, we have extraordinary leverage, relying on these external technologies that we do not have to build ourselves.
And that's where I was driving, I think, with the question a bit, right? Is that, it's Gallium Studios making Proxi. That's where you're working and what you're doing. You're working with Forte on this part. Where does Forte, and I talked at the top of the show, right? Hey, this is Forte's thing. Where does Forte enter the fray for somebody who's watching this and maybe doesn't even understand video game developers, the tools they use, publishers, that whole system?
Well, especially with the idea that we have users creating content and we want to secure that content, keep credit for the creator, and the transactions between them and other people. There's a huge amount of technology around the transactional system here and the security of it that I know you created that violin and somebody else couldn't steal it from you.
Don't let them steal my violin, please.
No. And you only made 10 of them, and we know where those 10 went. And we know that person traded that violin to this person, and we have a transactional history. That's a fairly deep technology that we don't have to build, that we're relying on Forte for, which saves us a huge amount of effort to focus on the creative side of where the game goes. Same on the AI side. There's a huge amount of pre-existing technology that we're able to lean on that avoids us having to hire 30 more people. So that's really the short answer, is that we can have a team focus on the creative direction of the game and rely on a company like Forte, knowing that we're going to have safe, secure transactions, and we can track every asset, where it goes, who owns it, and its history. That's really kind of what it's about.
So wait, now, is this an NFT? Because it sounds a lot like an NFT, and people do not like NFTs, Will.
Well, you can think of an NFT as a hammer, right? I can beat your head in with a hammer, or I can go build a house with a hammer. It's a tool, right?
It's intention. It's about intention.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so our intention is not that we build a speculative market where you're now selling your stupid JPEG for $1 million. The intention is that we use this technology in a way that our community becomes a wholesale part of the game development. And whatever effort they put into helping us develop our game, they get credit for that. So the whole blockchain NFT thing is really just a simple tool that we can now use to very securely track all the assets that people have put into our game, how many people have used them, what the value of it in the overall experience, not as going to roll the dice in Las Vegas on a craps game. All right, so I want to make a very clear distinction here between the idea of this tool being used for one purpose as opposed to another purpose. So I am only embracing this technology because I think it is going to be beneficial to our community in the long run, that they actually get credit for being co-developers of the game with us.
You talk about credit. Of course, I think when you brought it up at the top, right? When so many people think of NFTs, they think about money. Is there a way for people to be rewarded financially for what they make in the game?
Down the road, that's up to them. Really, a player who creates assets in the game will control, how many of these assets that they allow to other people, what the transactional cost is, or if it might be free.
Okay.
So again, it's the creator's decision, not ours. And I think by having this open marketplace with a very secure transactional system, it will achieve its equilibrium. But again,
sure.
the creators that are involved will get, their due credit and value for what they're providing to the game.
No, that makes perfect sense. When you started the answer, I was like, oh, like money's down the road. No, you're saying it's on the creator. If I want to go ahead and make 10 violins and I want to sell them, I can do that.
It's
but if
your
I want to
choice.
make a violin and say it's free for everybody, it's free for everybody.
Exactly. So some people can be motivated, more by in-game credit or outside of game credit, but a lot of other people can be motivated by social credit.
Sure.
Who is known as the best creator of musical instruments in this game?
Greg
and
Miller.
for a lot, for a lot of people, the social credit is going to be far more valuable than any monetary credit. But I don't want to cut off that path from any player.
For sure. That makes sense. And so that's where Forte enters the fray. That's what they're doing. They're running this part of the business.
Yeah. I mean, you need a secure marketplace, and a transactional system that everybody can trust. And, that's a huge undertaking that with a team our size, we cannot begin to do ourselves. So we rely on Forte technology to provide that for us, which in turn allows us to now create, hopefully, a very vibrant, creative community helping us build the game.
Okay, well, so then what's next for Gallium Studios and Proxi?
Well, we're going to be offering a pre-sale to our very early community members. It'll be happening very soon. And we hope that people come in, become part of our early community, help us direct the evolution of where this game goes, and possibly even create custom content that can be offered to our early players right off the bat.
That's what I love about it, right? Is that you're letting people in on the ground floor, and so the pre-sale items they're going for are a collection of items they can use to make their own memories, right? And start building stuff right away.
Certainly, yes.
That's it for this episode of Community Economics. Thank you so much, Will, for your time.
My pleasure,
Thumbs
Greg.
up to you too, sir. Visit, of course, GalliumStudios.com and follow Gallium Studios _ on Twitter so you can keep up with all the information on the game and the pre-sale and what comes next from the beautiful mind of Will Wright. And, of course, follow at Forte Platform on Twitter to learn more about the economic technology for games they are making each and every day. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, it's been our pleasure to serve you.